Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD. This is the season premiere, I guess, of our bracket rundown shows. Uh, and thankfully, somebody is not here tonight. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. David Dormer to my side, John Slika, John Titel with us tonight. Uh, the good news, no puppet. The bad news, he probably will be joining in about 10 minutes or so, but we're not waiting for him, so we're going to get going here. We've got other things to do with our lives. This is our bracket rundown show, and uh, basically, when the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee meets in March, they have three main things they need to do. They need to select the at-large teams. They need to create a master seed list between them and the automatic bids, 1 through 68. And then they got to create the bracket. We are not doing it in that manner whatsoever. We're doing a completely different way tonight. We're going to kind of do those first two steps both at the same time. In other words, we are going to pick the teams and create the seed list at once. And we're going to do that until all the at-large spots have been filled and there's just a few automatic bids left in the bottom 4 or 5 seed lines. At the end of the show, I'm going to fill those in. We have our Under the Radar show that we recorded last night, where if you want to find out more about those teams, you can go back and listen to that. After the show is done, we're going to create a bracket. And if you look down below us right now, you will see that bracket, and you just cheated and ruined the entire show. So rewind time and don't do that. Did I catch everything, guys?
You got it.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the screen share here. This is the screen that we are going to be using primarily tonight. It is our blank list that's going to be filled in with our 68 teams. So as we fill teams in, you'll see a little box down here that says at-large bids remaining. When that hits 0, we are going to, when it's 4, we're going to be out to the first 4. When it's 0, it's done completely. Stalika, we have a few terms we use, right? Can you want to define some of them for people?
Well, first of the seeds that we'll be using quite frequently tonight is a protected seed. So that is going to be the top 16 teams. The reason we call them protected seed is because they are protected from a potential home court disadvantage in the first round only in the NCAA tournament. Another term you'll probably hear quite frequently tonight is going to be first ballot teams. So typically these are the first, I believe, 36 teams that committee
up to
members
30, yeah, up to 36. There tend to be more like about 32 that at the end of the day, but up to 36, yes.
So I think up to 36 would be the key right here. And then the other one, and the most overused one we'll probably hear tonight, is going to be bubble, as in who is going to be in, who is going to be out.
Yep. And we also, as we fill in teams here, there will be some metrics that pop up, including the main NCAA metric, the net, strength of schedule, KenPom rating, our colleague Joby Fortune's J&G reading. OAR is an average of all the major metrics that we kind of developed here. But let's just kind of get into things here and stop with me talking and get to the rest of you. Titel, who are right now the top 4 teams in the nation in order, 1, 2, 3, and 4? Your one line.
It's changed this past week. I think your defending national champions are going to be the #1 overall seed. They almost blew it at Texas Tech, but hung on the road the other night. Houston seems to be unstoppable, so I think that they got to be up there. I almost dropped Purdue down to the 2 line tonight, but they got bailed out by themselves at the end with Fletcher Loyer, the hotshot freshman and brother of Foster Loyer Davidson. And I think a week ago I would have put UConn when they were undefeated, but now I think I got to get my Wildcats in there.
Arizona Wildcats in there. Dorman, what do you think about those 4 teams as your 1 seeds right now, especially with the way everyone's been losing the past week?
I had exactly what Titel had. I was torn with the last spot. Came down to exactly like John said, Arizona and UConn. I didn't want to be called a homer, but I got a slight advantage to Arizona right now, and probably would have put UConn on the 5th overall seed and let them battle it out in the Final Four if Arizona and UConn can get there.
Stalika, are you there also? Do we have a consensus here on these first 4 teams?
I agree on the first 4 teams. The only change I probably would have made personally would have had Purdue as the #2 overall team and have Houston as #3 overall right here. I'll still go with some of the wins that Purdue got, like Gonzaga and Duke, and the Phil Knight Invitational as part of the edge at this point.
Yeah, here's those two profiles. They both have a home loss. And I guess you could argue here that doesn't Purdue have a few more quality wins than Houston on the left there? Titel, what about that? Especially given that, especially on the one line, the order does matter in terms of which region you're in and things like that.
You're right. I mean, I would go with the non-conference strength of schedule favoring Houston, although the strength of schedule favors Purdue. I think it's, if not a coin flip, at least very, very close. But yeah, I would not lose sleep over Purdue going ahead of Houston.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I really like that strength of schedule on Houston, given that there's a lot of Tier 4 games here. It makes me wonder how that non-conference strength of schedule got that good. So what do you think about that, Dorman? What about if we do just a two-team flip here of Purdue and Houston?
I got no problem with it. I'm not losing sleep over it either.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't I stick with you, Dorman, then, and give me your two line here, because we're moving right along. The show goes good without the puppet.
Connecticut, a pair of SEC teams, Tennessee and Alabama. Yes. And I'll go out west for one more, UCLA.
I really like that collection of four, but I'm not the deciding factor here. You guys are. So Sleeka, let me ask you first. UConn, Tennessee, Alabama, UCLA. Did he nail it?
I think he nailed UConn, Alabama, and Tennessee, but I think a team that we're not expecting to potentially discuss this high. How about TCU after their win at Baylor? They're suddenly 13-1. They've won their first two games in the Big 12. Their win at home against Providence is also starting to look a lot better. And also keep in mind, wins away from home against Iowa and Utah are also going to hold some weight.
So you take TCU over UCLA. You do realize TCU has a quad 4 loss.
I don't care.
I don't care. Titel, do you care?
I don't, but I have a good reason why. So not only were they missing Mike Miles, but also Damian Boff for that game, which was by 1 point, albeit to Northwestern State. I think that is one of the perfect examples we have of the committee saying, is there a good reason why this team lost to such a bad team? And the answer is yes, there's two good reasons, 2 injuries to good players.
But would you actually take TCU over a UCLA? Because I keep seeing that 313 non-conference strength of schedule for TCU, and it's a big eyesore for me.
I would not. I would put UCLA, but I'm telling you, I would not have even considered TCU 24 hours ago, and now when your only loss is by 1 point, when you had 2 guys injured, they're in the conversation, which is amazing.
Okay. It sounds like you were outvoted there, Sleeka, 2-1. I think we are going to be leaving UCLA up here. Titel, right? UConn, Tennessee, Alabama, UCLA. We're good with that.
No veto.
No veto. I do I didn't really think of TCU this high, but I think I kind of personally looked at my list without really factoring in what happened with this TCU win. So, I think you've convinced me, Sleek, already that I think TCU probably belongs in the 3 line, and I'm going to give you the 3 line just for that purpose.
I have no major qualms as far as UCLA being on the 2. So yes, I'm going to go ahead and add TCU right here. And I think Gonzaga and Wisconsin, I would add for sure. I was initially thinking of having Miami as my final number 3 seed. When you look at what they did against Georgia Tech last night, I would have a few second thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and add Iowa State as my next number 3 seed instead.
Okay, TCU, Gonzaga, then Wisconsin and Iowa State. A Wisconsin team with a 54 net coming in here on the 3 line. Titel, do they belong this high?
They don't, but I can certainly understand. Since you asked, I'm leaning more towards the Razorbacks. They only have 2 losses, each by 3 points, each away from home this year, and they've had injuries to explain both of them, just like with TCU. When they lost to Creighton, they were missing Graham and Smith. Smith was out for the road game at LSU. And of course, they still have the injury to Trevon Brazile. He's done for the year, which my understanding is the committee will not factor in a guy who's not coming back for the tournament, because it's what would your team have done if you were healthy, as you will be in the tournament, which is not the case with him. But the 2 losses, much like TCU's, are explainable.
Yeah. Dorman, what do you think? Was Wisconsin mistaken? Do we need Arkansas instead?
I had Arkansas. I had Arkansas ahead of Wisconsin, but it's real tight. I have no problem with that line.
Okay, but are we good with Iowa State here?
I have Arkansas ahead of Iowa State there. Yes.
Okay, but okay. Well, if you had to take 2 out of 3, Dorman, I guess Wisconsin, Iowa State, Arkansas. Which two are you taking?
Wisconsin and Arkansas.
You take Wisconsin and Arkansas.
Yep.
Tytel, you'd go Arkansas and Iowa State.
I mean, I was waiting for the Xavier vote from the other John. But,
I'll put them under consideration here. We'll keep it under consideration.
Close, but not quite.
Okay. Since we've got 2 different teams for each of the 3 of you here, I'm going to end up being the tiebreaker. I'm going to throw Arkansas in and knock Wisconsin down a seed line because somebody's got to be a tiebreaker. And I just am again going back to these 2 profiles. You got the Wake Forest loss, which is a bit more of an eyesore. And there's an excuse for the Arkansas loss to LSU. And I like the win over San Diego State a lot. I do not like the Wisconsin win over Iowa because I think Iowa will be a tier 3 win by the end of the day, not a tier 1 win, even on the road. So I think there's a few things there on Wisconsin that kind of pull that profile down a bit. That being said, we're flying along here. So Tytel, you want to give us the 4 line?
I do. I want to get Texas in here, and let me preface that by saying I do not know how the committee is going to deal with Coach Beard's firing. I don't know if it's unprecedented, but I think it's a very complicated situation.
Well, they're pretty good without Beard, so hey,
But do they get rewarded for that or not? I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know either.
I think that Xavier's got to get in here. They've just been red hot. It's one thing to beat Georgetown. It's quite another thing to beat UConn. If we need 2 more.
We do still have Wisconsin under consideration.
Yeah, we can put them in here. I was going to put them on the 5 line, but they have good metrics, and my brother-in-law went there, so that's not a problem. For the 4th, I'll give Joby some love and go with Virginia. I might have put Ohio State in had they made that last shot tonight, but not so much.
Not so much. Ohio State under consideration, but not in here. Dorman, what do you think about these 4 teams? Texas, Xavier, Wisconsin, Virginia for our next 4.
I have Virginia there. I'm with Tytel there. I agree on all 4 of them. I wouldn't switch anyone out, and I would leave Ohio State yet still under consideration without the win tonight.
All right, Salika, how about you? What do you think on these 4 teams in this order?
I think Virginia, I would have no qualms in there, but I would put Kansas State up here right now. Consider that Kansas State just got a nice win at Texas right there, and you couple that with a win at home against West Virginia, a win against LSU on a neutral floor that's starting to look better. I'm not sure I'd put the Wildcats ahead of Virginia quite yet, but I think the comparison is worth looking at.
Yeah, I mean, Tytel, look at that, 13-1 and a win over a Texas team on the road that we just put in on this line. Doesn't that say something?
It does. What does their non-conference strength of schedule say to you, Chad?
I say it's better than that 313 of TCU. That's that we put it way above them even. So
true.
Notice this is why I did not choose Kansas State above Virginia.
Okay. So you're telling me, Slicka, they'd be your next team up, but they're not quite in. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. Then I guess we actually have our 4 line, and wow, we are flying through this. This is way easier than I thought it would be, guys. You got to start disagreeing somewhere. Normally, when we get to the 5 and 6 lines, things is where things do start getting a little more contentious, I think. And Dorman, let me turn to you. We do have both Ohio State and Kansas State under consideration at the moment. Neither one in quite yet.
My first one in on the 5 line is going to be Miami.
Okay.
Ohio State, Baylor, and Kansas State.
Okay. Tytel, Miami, Ohio State, Baylor, Kansas State. Is that the right 4 teams here? Because I think there's a couple of names we have not mentioned that belong under consideration at least.
Buckeyes look pretty good tonight, and we're this close, so I can put them in here. Baylor also came this close to beating TCU the other night. And again, when we talk about injuries, I don't know if or when Jonathan Chama Chachu is coming back for them. If he does, then I think that he adds a whole new interior. He does add a whole new interior presence for them. But again, I don't know when he's coming back. I think that Kansas State has looked great. Miami, though, I think there's a rule that if you lose to Josh Pastner, my Wildcat brethren, you have to go down a seed line. So I think I would stick Indiana in here, keeping in mind that their hotshot freshman, Jalen Hood-Schifino, has missed a couple games. When healthy, they are 9-1 with him. When he's hurt, they're 1-2 without him. They lost to my Wildcats and to your Rutgers team, Chad. So he is a difference maker. And now that he is healthy, I think that they are in consideration. I think should be here, but if not, at least under consideration.
And that's the team. That's the main team. That's the thing that was missing that we had not yet mentioned is this Indiana team. Stalika, what about that? Do they belong in above Miami?
I don't think Ohio State belongs in here quite yet. It would have been nice if they had been able to hold on against Purdue tonight, for example. In part, I think, are we sure Ohio State and Wisconsin didn't have their metrics flipped somewhere? The closer I look at the Buckeye profile, they have a win against Rutgers at home, and that's the only one I think is a sure win against a surefire tournament team right here. Beyond Texas that, Tech, you get to UC, Texas. Well, I don't know if we're going to put Texas Tech in quite yet.
No, not
honestly,
yet.
I think
Northwestern.
Honestly, I would take Chad's team in Rutgers before I would take the Buckeyes right now.
I was not looking at Rutgers quite this high, although, we could have their winner from Maryland today. It was nice. But now we've got a debate here. We got Indiana, we got Rutgers, we got Miami and Ohio State. It looks like we kind of all agree that Baylor and Kansas State at least belong here. So let's kind of lock them in the top two spots here. And kind of
can you put Indiana up next to Rutgers there, please?
On the screen here?
Okay. On the team sheet.
Yep, on the team sheet. Let's go Indiana and Rutgers. Again, we also have Ohio State and Miami under consideration here. Dorman, what do you think? Rutgers, there are the 2 quad 3 losses, which is why I would not have put them in quite yet.
I was thinking with you, Chad, that I didn't have Rutgers this high, and I had Indiana ahead of Rutgers in the pecking order, but it's a lot tighter than I really thought it was. That Maryland win I thought was going to look great. Doesn't look so great as of late. That's tight. I have Indiana slightly ahead of Rutgers.
Okay, but what about this 4-team debate here? Because we've got to both put 2 of these teams onto this line here, I think. Indiana, Rutgers, Ohio State, and Miami. Who would you go with, Dorman?
Indiana and Miami.
Yeah, vote for Indiana and Miami. Titel, who would you go with?
Indiana and the Buckeyes.
I think we're definitely getting Indiana in then. There's 2 votes for them. Salika, Miami, Ohio State, or Rutgers for your third?
I'm gonna go with the U right here.
All right, we got 2 votes for Miami, so they do sneak in here for the final spot. And Salika, I'm gonna stick with you. Go to the 6th line here. We do have Rutgers and Ohio State under consideration.
Yeah, I think I will go ahead and submit Rutgers for sure right here. I'm still having a few second thoughts. I'm having second thoughts about the Buckeyes, but I still think the 6 probably would be an okay line for them. But if we're looking at Ohio State, I think we also have to take a look at one of the teams that beat the Buckeyes out in Maui, and that's San Diego State.
Yes,
so
thank you. I think they
will add them right here. And even with a bit of a second half, even with a bit of a second half stumble last night, I think we need to add the Missouri Tigers on this line.
And you go in Missouri here. Dorman, are these the teams here? I know we were debating Rutgers and Ohio State for the last line, but are San Diego State and Missouri the other 2 teams that belong here?
I actually think so. I was going to bring up Missouri if Stalika didn't there. I'm with Stalika. I think Missouri's deserving. They've been red hot the last couple of weeks, and I got them exactly where they are. They're on the 6th line.
Titel, is that right? Or should we be talking about another ACC team not named Miami?
Is it a team in North Carolina? Because if so, I don't know.
It's one of the two of them. It's either one of them.
I know, but they've both been roller coastering the past couple of weeks, so I don't know.
But so is this right then? San Diego State of Missouri. Wow.
I mean, I'm nervous about Missouri just because they have been roller coastering as well, and it's one thing to like lose at Kansas without Mosley and lose at Arkansas. Like, it's not bad. I wish they had a little more on the plus side, but I can live with them, I guess.
So we can live with these, huh? All right. Let me stick with you then, and let's go to a 7 line here. And is this where we start putting some of those ACC teams in, or maybe another Big East team?
I'm tempted to put them in an 8-9 spot only so that we can have them play again in the tournament every year now. But
well, actually, that wouldn't be allowed. That would not be allowed in the first round, technically. So yeah.
Look at you raining on my parade. So I guess that if we can't do that, then let's throw them both in here, 8 miles apart on Tobacco Road, and then it starts to get a little dicey because we're starting to get teams that have lost recently.
Well, you just did that with Duke and North Carolina.
I know, and I don't want to do it with 4 of them, but somebody's got to make it. So let's get Marquette in here for a little Big East love, just because they've beaten so many teams in non-conference play and are starting to beat teams in conference play. And then as far as West Virginia or Auburn, I guess if I had to pick between the two, I'll pick West Virginia. But if somebody wants to veto Auburn or go with somebody else, I won't be offended.
Dorman, West Virginia, Auburn, maybe a team from the West Coast Conference.
I went back and forth this afternoon with this West Virginia, Auburn debate for a while. It's so tight. I'm not going to have an issue either way. I ended up going to Auburn, but it's close.
Yes, Stalika, what do you think? What do you think on this West Virginia Auburn question here? Because that seems to be the issue we're going with.
I know it's showing in tier 2, but losing to Georgia has to be a bit of an eyesore for the Tigers. So I'd probably penalize them a little bit right here. But I think another ACC team, I think we're looking at the wrong end of the state of North Carolina. What about Wake Forest? Honestly, I'm probably a little more impressed with who they've beaten as opposed to Duke or Carolina.
You're looking at 5 losses that's already in the season, including LSU and Loyola Marymount, who are probably not making the field.
Lost to Carolina this week.
I'm pretty sure LMU's not making the field, but I could make a case for LSU.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll throw them under consideration here. I think Wake Forest is worth discussing tonight. I personally think you're about 3 seed lines high on discussing them, but Tytel, what do you think? Should we go somewhere other than West Virginia or Auburn, somebody like a Wake Forest?
He's about 10 seeds high.
Okay.
I think I'm going to make an argument for Michigan State here as well. Malik Hall has been injured for 8 games, and they lost 3 of them, including a 18-point loss at Notre Dame. You have to think that with a healthy Malik Hall, that ain't happening. When healthy, they've beaten Oregon, Villanova, Kentucky. Now he's healthy. I think that you can make the argument that they are this high worthy with him healthy.
Yeah, and of those teams they've beaten, Oregon, Villanova, Kentucky, which one is in so far?
I will go with none of them.
I mean, I think they've beaten names. I just don't know that they've beaten teams at this point. I guess that's the way to put it.
Yep.
I mentioned it, Dorman. What about the Gales?
Yeah, I'm right here with the Gales.
The San Diego State game, the win looks nice. That the Oral Roberts, North Texas, their metrics are through the roof. The number 12 net.
The losses aren't even bad. Obviously, the first 2. I'm here. I'm with you, Chad. I'm at St. Mary's right at this spot.
Okay. Well, I guess we have our consensus for the 7 line, and we've got 4 holdovers here for the 8. And Dorman, I'm going to let you do the 8 line. Like I said, we have 4 holdovers.
Well, before we get to a Dorman, Are we sure Chad wasn't impressed by their 20-point win against Academy of Art the other night?
Let's see. Was it even me? Oh, there it is. Academy of Art, the Urban Knights. Yes, I actually know that. But Dorman,
wasn't it close for a half also, Stalika?
I wasn't following it that closely. You'd have to ask the puppet or Zach when they come on.
Dorman, go ahead and give me some 8 seeds here. We have Auburn, Wake, Michigan State, St. Mary's all under consideration, but you can go with any 4 teams you like.
St. Mary's. Auburn. Might get some pushback here, but I would put Kentucky. I have Kentucky going in next.
I think they've got to go in at some point. So yeah, I wouldn't push back against you, but I'm not the deciding vote here at this point, at least.
And it's tight because all these teams have been so cold lately. I was hemming and hawing. I would have had Illinois till last night. Virginia Tech was okay in my book. I'll go Sparty with Michigan State.
We'll go Michigan State. Okay. Salika, what do you think about those 4 being the teams here? Again, your Wake Forest being held out because I think we all agreed you were about 5 or 10 seed lines high. But putting them aside, what do you think of those 4 teams?
Well, until they beat LSU, I wouldn't have even had Kentucky on my board. They did not even have a single win in the top 2 tiers outside of I think it was Yale until they got the LSU win at home right here. But if we're talking about, well, I can't really talk about New Mexico because that loss against Fresno State's going to be a bit of an eyesore. I don't think we've discussed Maryland yet.
I'll put Maryland up instead here with Kentucky.
Do we have
the
to?
Nice? They have the Miami win. Miami's already in. Kentucky hasn't been anybody that we've put in the field yet. But go ahead, Salika. You want to make the Maryland case?
I would have had an easier time making this case if we were talking about progress through the beginning of December, but unfortunately that home loss against UCLA, I think, has broken the Terps for the time being, and they're probably going to need some serious reprogramming. But if I were to look for I was going to say, if we're looking for another team where you want to start thinking out of the box, how about 4-0 in the ACC Clemson?
You're pulling out ACC teams like it was a good conference. It
is actually starting to look like a respectable conference right here.
I understand 4-0 in the conference, Salika, but you have 2 quad 4 losses already, and you haven't beat anybody we put in this field.
You might also want to hide that strength of schedule, by the way.
And one of the worst strength of schedules in the nation. I mean, I would rather, quite frankly, Dorman, I'd rather be talking about Providence right now, no?
Yes, absolutely. Well-deserved, Providence.
I mean, here's a team that's beaten 2 teams that we've put in this field already.
Right. When it comes down to these teams, obviously we know they all can lose. But to me, is how strong are those wins in conference, out of conference? To me, those are really strong. Beating UConn recently, I got Providence right here on the 9 line.
Okay, you'd have them on the 9 line.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you wouldn't. Well, this was your 8 line.
That was my 8 line.
Okay. So, all right. Titel, would you push Providence up into this 8 line?
I think that's just a little too much recency bias. Like, yes, they're playing like a team that is an 8 seed caliber, but
they won 8. They won 8 in a row. I mean,
yes, it's a lot of recency bias going back a month. But...
The only bad loss is St. Louis. I thought St. Louis was going to be solid this year. Obviously, not panning out. But besides that, 2 losses to TCU and Miami.
All right, and guys, thanks for joining us. We're done here for the evening.
Okay. We can start now.
The puppet
I know I'm a little early because you said what you said we were starting at 9:30, right? It's 10:30. It's 10:20 right
now. Puppet, we have 7 seed lines locked in already. We've been flying along without you, thankfully. But now that you're here, we're kind of throwing up debate here. We have a St. Mary's, Auburn, Kentucky, Michigan State foursome sitting on the 8 line, and the question is, does a Providence potentially belong in there for one of those 4?
Yeah, I would say Providence belongs in there over all of them because Providence has done some stuff, and with the exception of maybe St. Mary's, I don't think any of them have done a damn thing.
Okay, we can only take one team out. Kentucky was the team I guess I heard the most ideas to take it out.
They've done the least.
All right.
You know, the one thing I'll say about Kentucky's resume is that it does have Kentucky written at the top of it. But if you get by that, what the hell have they done?
Let's go ahead and we'll make that switch here. We will make it same areas, Auburn, Providence, and Michigan State for our 8 line. We've got Maryland, Wake Forest, and Kentucky under consideration. And I'll tell you what, Salika, let me go to you for the 9 line while we give the puppet a few minutes to digest what we did so far. And then we'll go to him for the next line after this.
So I definitely think we need to get Maryland and Kentucky in here.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and also get LSU in here now. And as far as, well, I'm not taking Illinois given how they've melted down right here. And I'm going to get skewered if I suggest another ACC team. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Penn State right here.
I would have listened to you if you want to talk about a Conference USA team, but you did not.
Well, Pitt's not in Conference USA.
No, Pitt's not in Conference USA. Florida Atlantic is, especially with a nice win over UAB tonight. But Dorman, what do you think? Maryland, Kentucky, LSU, Penn State.
I don't have LSU anywhere near here.
I don't have LSU in my field, quite honestly.
Yeah,
but,
I don't like LSU here. That's a removal for me.
Do you have Penn State in your field?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Right. I got them on the 10 line, but I got no problem there on the 9 line. They have wins and they've beaten people.
Okay. Titel, what do you think? Maryland, Kentucky, Penn State, and who would be a 4th?
I am going to suggest an ACC team that's not on the board. I want to set Virginia Tech at least under consideration, and I can explain it. So, First of all, 4 losses all year in 1 possession games, 3 points, 2 points, 2 points, and overtime. One of the 2-pointers was at Charleston, which I can't believe they're not in yet because they're amazing. And then Clemson and Wake in conference play without Hunter Couture, who's been like their star 3-point shooter all season. He's still hurt, but I think he will be healthy by the time the season's over. It's hard to explain losing at BC in overtime on the road. Like, I get it. So there's a lot of reasons not. They beat Minnesota, North Carolina, Dayton, Oklahoma State, Penn State, a bunch of teams who are not in yet, as Chad likes to say, but they have a bunch of good wins on their resume when Couture is healthy. He's currently not healthy, which is why they've lost back-to-back ACC games by a total of 5 points.
All right, and that's where you got the Vatech up there.
There is a disqualifier here. They lost to Boston College.
It's almost a disqualifier.
Which is why I actually threw NC State up here on the right side. You know, if we're talking to all these ACC teams, I think they got to be in the same discussion, don't they, Griggs?
I don't like them as much as Vatech. Based on what?
Well, because they didn't lose to Boston College. but let me go to you here. We got Maryland, Kentucky, Penn State that seem to have passed the test for everybody, but we have an open spot on this line.
Okay. And I'm trying to let me see. I'm trying to.
I mean, would you go Vatech? No, Pitt is not in yet either. We want to put them under consideration.
I kind of like them.
We are really putting the entire ACC under consideration here.
Well, let me look at. Yeah, if you look at Pitt here, I like the win at NC State. I know NC State isn't that strong, but to go on the road and win there, I think the win at Northwestern is really good. And again, these might not be teams that are high in the seed list, but they are teams that typically play really well at home. They got 2 of them. Virginia, pretty good. I just like that those wins. And then nothing here really has me holding my nose. Vandy, it smells a little bad, but I kind of like when we're talking about SC or ACC teams, I kind of like Pitt more than the ones that you guys are discussing right now.
What do you think, Dorman? Should Pitt be that 4th team then?
Yes.
Okay. Titel, can you live with Pitt here?
I can't. It's another recency bias. I understand anytime you beat Virginia, it should bump you up a little bit, but I'm telling you, like, I know Illinois has lost a lot of games, but they beat UCLA and Texas. And using Chad's, have they beaten anybody in the field, John Rationale? Yes.
I think that's a good rationale, is it not?
Yes, so put them in, Chad.
Well, there they
Pitt
are.
has
Illinois
also beaten Carolina, who is in this field.
Is Wisconsin in yet?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Wisconsin's in. Okay, good.
It's got the Virginia win.
Stalika, can I talk into Illinois over Pitt here to finish off this line?
Illinois over Pitt.
How is
No, I will take either Charleston or Florida Atlantic.
There weren't options. It was Illinois or Pitt.
It's going to be Pitt.
Okay, so we're at a 2-2 tie. I'm calling the tiebreaker. The Illini are in.
I want to say that I don't have Kentucky in my field at all, much less all the way several lines inside the bubble.
Oh, but you already said why they belong in the field, Griggs.
Why did I? No, I didn't. Did I?
Yes, because they have the word Kentucky on their profile.
Kentucky.
This is what happens when you're late for the podcast, Puppet.
Yeah.
Puppet. I'm going to give you the 10 line here. We have Vatech, Wake, LSU, and Pitt under consideration, but you can go with any 4 teams that we do not have in yet, including a team from Conference USA.
Yes. Well, that's where I'm heading, and I know what I like what they did tonight. I have Florida Atlantic up here. Another team that isn't even under consideration, but I have Charleston.
Okay.
I know they lost tonight, so let me. I guess Sam Houston probably doesn't belong here. That's just one too many against non.
You're not going to sell me on that one.
Okay. Let me see.
And they lost tonight at home against Grand Canyon.
Apologies for the dead air. Wisconsin is in. Is Arizona State in?
No,
not yet.
Okay.
Arizona State. They have not. Did that game go? No, they won tonight. Actually, they beat Washington State tonight. Okay.
And another also from the Pac-12.
Did you not want Pitt in? You just made a case for Pitt in the last line.
No, I want Pitt. Yeah.
Okay, we'll put Pitt in there. All right, there we got Florida Atlantic. Let me just pull up this Florida Atlantic profile here because it's not the team, not getting the publicity that Charleston's getting. Titel, I like this FAU profile better than Charleston's right now. Don't you?
It's very close. I'll give you that. They're both winning on the road. They both have a mediocre strength of schedule. They don't really have a signature win. They both have road losses by double digits to Power 5 teams. It's a very similar profile, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, then maybe they both belong on the same line, like we just did.
Sure. If I can veto ASU, I'm happy to let you keep those two.
Who would you take out?
Who would you have instead? I'm a little scattershot right now, so I can't help but think that there's somebody not in the field that I have way up my sleeve.
Okay.
You have Illinois, Griggs?
Yeah.
Illinois is in already.
Illinois is in already.
Let me throw a team out there. How about Utah State?
A little bland, but I like them more than Kentucky.
All right. I tried to throw somebody out there.
What about Kent State?
Well, let me go back to Titel, though. You said you want to take Arizona State out. Who do you put in to replace them?
A different Mountain West team that only has 1 loss on the road by 4 points with KJ Jenkins hurt. He missed the game Tuesday night at Fresno. When he's healthy, they're undefeated. When he's not, they're winless.
So you'd go New Mexico here.
Lobo.
I think I kind of can buy that argument. Dorman, what do you think? Lobos instead of Arizona State?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Stalika, you can join us here to veto out the Sun Devils?
You can veto them out for this line, but not the following line when we get to that.
Not the following line. Well, I'm not going to give you the following line. I'm going to give Titel the following line. And so I don't think we're going to see Arizona State on it.
You are correct. We are going to see Vatech. We are going to see Creighton, who is getting much better now that Kalkbrenner is healthy.
Yes.
We're going to see Utah State because Chad seems to like the Mountain West at this spot. And I don't think we're going to see either of the M's with Mississippi State or Memphis. If you want to put a Pac-12 team here, let's go to the team that beat my Wildcats. How about Utah?
Yeah, how about Utah? And in fact, just as a note here, that would actually be the first of our first 4 teams. So the order does matter on the seed line as well. If we want to switch things up here, whoever's last of the seed line is going to Dayton. Stalika, Vatech, Creighton, Utah State, and Utah. A little beehive line here.
As much as I like the beehive right here, I can't get with Utah State yet. they only have 2 losses, but they smell like a meth lab. Let's be honest. I used that comparison last night for under the radar right here. So if I'm looking for a replacement team for them,
yep.
I really don't want to go Mississippi State yet. And if
there's only 3 spots left after this line. So if you think the team belongs in, you've got to be mentioning them here, quite frankly.
I think no. I think I am going to go with Memphis right here. Auburn is the only win they would have that's really against a surefire team, but also wins against Vandy, A&M, VCU, and Ole Miss are going to be respectable, but no one's going to have a sterling resume at this point.
Yeah, Dorman, what do you think? Should Memphis be in here maybe over this Utah State profile, which I'll admit is a little more bland than I even thought it was. So now that I took a closer look at it.
Yeah.
Who else is in with this group here? Utah State, Memphis. Who are the other 2 again? I had
Virginia Tech, Creighton, Utah State, Utah. We got Mississippi State, Wake, LSU, Arizona State, and Memphis all under consideration. Those are the teams we're debating for this 11 line.
Did Southern Miss again? I'm coming from
Southern Miss has not been mentioned yet.
Okay. Did they lose tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So that's why they weren't mentioned tonight.
I definitely have Virginia Tech and Creighton on this line. I had Memphis. I'm not going to go crazy without them. And I probably have Wake. I would get rid of Utah and Utah State, but it's tight. I would bring in Wake and Memphis.
I'm a little surprised that people continue to ignore oh, wait, never mind. No, Clemson not even on the board.
No, I've already been skewered for mentioning Clemson earlier.
and
is that better than everyone else?
Yeah, that's true.
Why don't we just make my seedless the bracket, since I'm so much more correct than all of you all are?
Well, should we talk one more Big Ten team? Shouldn't we be talking about Northwestern here also?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, so Griggs, who would you go Utah State and Utah? Because I think Vodtech and Creighton are staying in here. Or would you put Memphis and Utah, which is where I think the consensus is going so far? Or would you go somewhere else entirely?
I would probably go. I would definitely go Clemson. I just don't have Utah State. I know Utah State has the bloated record, but they're so bland that I just can't get excited about it yet. I think the bubble is definitely within reach. I just don't think that they've earned the spot yet. I kind of like Clemson.
Okay, so what I'm done here is Utah State we've pulled out, which means I brought Utah up 1 spot just so that the next team will be the first 4. And let's do it this way. Let's pick the first 2 of the first 4 here, because we've been all over the place with these 8 different teams that are under consideration: Mississippi State, Wake, LSU, Arizona State, Memphis, Clemson, Northwestern, Utah State. I could potentially argue that maybe NC State or Oklahoma State deserves a half of mention here as well. Yeah, but
Penn State.
Penn State deserves half a mention. I'll throw them up. Kent State.
It was Kent State.
Kent State would beat all these teams.
If you put Kent State in, it doesn't fill one of our first 4 spots, though, because they will be an auto bid winner under the way we're doing this. But Dorman, let me go to you. Give me your best 2 teams off of this list of 9.
Kent State and Northwestern.
Kent State and Northwestern. Titel, what do you think?
Mississippi State, Utah State.
All right,
we're not going to make your life complicated.
Yeah, we are. Salika, what do you
fabulous
think?
process. I'm so glad the viewers.
I'm not going to make Chad's job easier. I'm going Wake and LSU right here.
Okay. I'm going to be picking Briggs. If you don't agree with any of the teams they picked, I'm just picking my own too.
I agree with. I got Kent State and Clemson.
All right, Kent State, Clemson, the only 2 that got multiple bids. Kent State is in as an auto bid window. Clemson, the first of our first 4 teams. Let's try to get a couple more teams in here. Dorman, let me go back to you here. Let's who would you take for the next team up? Let's take one at a time here for our last 3.
Northwestern.
You like Northwestern? Would anybody say be offended by Northwestern here?
Nope.
All right, Northwestern's in. We're going to make this happen quickly here. Titel, Give me your next one here. Mississippi State, Wake, LSU, Arizona State, Memphis, Utah State.
It is still Mississippi State.
Mississippi State. And I don't think that is that going to be offensive to anybody.
If it is, I'm happy to defend them.
All right. And Sleeka, who would be the last team in?
I would take Wake as my last team in right here.
All right.
You just kept out LSU, Stolika.
I had Wake above LSU.
Wake and LSU. Griggs, you agree with him there? Wake over LSU?
I do, because I really like that win at Wisconsin.
Okay. And you would also agree that they are above Memphis and Arizona State as well?
I like Memphis. I can't remember why. Let me see them again.
Let's pull Memphis up, because I honestly, if it was my choice, I'd go Memphis for this last spot here. But I see the case for Wake, honestly.
I do. I kind of like, had they not lost to Tulane, I could swallow. I wouldn't be choking on Memphis quite as much. Yeah, I kind of like Wake a little better.
Okay, so let's put Wake Forest in for the last team here. So our first four would be Clemson, Northwestern, Mississippi State, and Wake. Teams that did not make the field that we discussed were LSU, Arizona State, Memphis, and Utah State. There's a lot of other teams that are close. One team that I mentioned earlier was NC State. Dorman, who else is close that did not make our field, is not under our consideration list right now?
You have Utah on there. Utah's in. Sorry,
Utah actually got in. Yeah,
not from the automatic qualifier list.
You can
Texas
mention it.
Tech.
Okay.
Oklahoma State. UAB.
UAB with the loss tonight. I know it was at Florida Atlantic, but it was a loss, and I think that kind of knocked them down a step for me. I think they would have been on this list, but for
them. I would have liked them a lot had they won that game.
Yeah. How about Tytel? Anyone else anyone else that you're looking at in this area?
I mean, I can argue that like Iowa has not been healthy in like a month and just lost McCaffrey for mental health issues, and Chris Murray is back, but I won't, because they're losing. They might lose out the rest of the season. So
actually, they've closed in on the game against Indiana as we record this. So who knows? It's down to a 4-point game.
This was a game that started with Indiana up by 22 in the first half.
Yeah. By the way, that we are not considering certain games that are going to go final after about 10 o'clock tonight. So, such as that Indiana Iowa game, UCLA's game tonight, Arizona's game tonight, Gonzaga's game tonight. Sleeka, anybody else that you're considering here?
We're talking about teams that would still be under consideration. Central Florida may get in the discussion later on. I think they're the only other team in the American that's even worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the group. I think that group of 9 we have here of the next teams up. I'm not offended by what we did at all, though. I think we've got a pretty good field here.
Yeah, I like UCF. I think they're kind of being undervalued, but their profile doesn't top out as high as it probably needs to.
I would note that Southern Miss and Oral Roberts would probably fill out the 12 line with Sam Houston's loss today, probably dropping them down to a 13 seed. And let me just quickly reveal here the rest of what we threw out there is the 13 through 16 lines with Liberty, Lowell, Yale, Dayton, UC Santa Barbara, Iona, Edwardsville, Longwood, Indiana State, Norfolk State, Greensboro, Grambling, Corpus Christi, Northern Kentucky, Eastern Washington, Colgate, and Wagner. A little confession here as well. I see these by the J&G ratings. So if you disagree with these, talk to Joby, not to me. But
I was wondering why it felt like the MCC days for a Dayton on the 14 line. Right,
but how about that? The first Atlantic 10 team coming in 14. Right between the probably be a 13 seed, but not even being inside the bubble.
Yeah. For the I got a question for you. Yeah. You just flew through those. Say I want an entire hour on just all the teams you just flew through. What can I do?
You should do what I told people to do at the beginning of the show when you weren't here, and watch our Under the Radar podcast from last night.
Well, you told me the wrong time to do that. It's as if you didn't want me here. I'm starting to think you did that on purpose.
Let me run through each of you now, just for any other thoughts what we did here, or any other final thoughts at all on any issues at all? Salika, let me start with you.
I'm going to go in a slightly different direction right here. There is another under the radar-ish final thought. If you followed the career of Joe Dumars when he was at McNeese State, he scored over 2,600 points in his career, and this was before the advent of the three-point line right here. So I believe as of last night, McNeese is naming their court Joe Dumars Court. So got to give a shout out to one of the original bad boys for McNeese and also for the Detroit Pistons back in the day.
We'll be seeing that court in during championship week as well. They will be hosting the Southland tournament in Lake Charles there this year. Dorman.
Just even up to a few weeks ago, there was a lot of chatter, me included, about how many teams we were bringing in from the Mountain West. And a lot of those names seem to have disappeared rather quickly. Yeah. So, as Joby said, they have seemed to fade away.
Yeah, we didn't even get Boise State onto that under consideration list, and I don't think they deserve to be there, quite honestly. So, Titel.
Two possible matchups that caught my eye. We could get Jeff Capel's Pitt team playing against his alma mater of Duke in a 7-10 game, or against his hated rival of North Carolina in a 7-10 game, which I think either one would be fantastic. And going a little farther, I'll have to defer to the folks who know the state of Ohio better than I do, but I assume that Ohio State does not often get Kent State on the schedule, so that could be a nice little in-state battle.
Oh, there we
Dad,
go.
are you sure you don't want to swap Yale and Dayton right here? Because I could see a very interesting 4-13 matchup.
Oh.
Okay, it's been vetoed. We got Dayton and Yale swapped. Now go ahead, Salika.
Nothing more.
There we go. Let me see here. Griggs, you want to finish off the show here? And actually, I think you had some comments also that you want to make about the big news about the fact that the tournament's expanding to 96 teams, but actually expanding.
It's not. So, I guess, yeah, first, really quick, and it's kind of the same comment I made last night on Under the Radar. We might have a different audience, but between the Western Athletic Conference, the Sun Belt, and Conference USA, and a little bit with the Colonial, I think that there's 4 Under the Radar conferences that are positioned to get more than one team inside the bubble. I'm not saying they're all going to do it, but the way it's laying out, there's actually some quality wins to be gotten in those leagues. To the point that you made, the Transformation Committee has voted to expand all Division I championships to include 25% of the field. So if you do the math, there's about 363 D1 basketball teams that would come out to somewhere between 90 and 96. Now,
but it was not a binding vote, though. It was a suggestion.
Correct. It was a suggestion. It hasn't even been adopted in the legislation yet. A lot has to happen in order for this to expand. There's been suggestions to expand the tournament before, and it never really has. They were going to go to 96, actually, I want to say about 10 or 12 years ago, and it didn't happen. I don't think it will this year either, but there's no guarantee that it won't. It might. It very conceivably could. I think it would be a huge mistake. I think it would really damage the under the radar conferences. I think there's about 9 or 10 under the radar conferences that would never see the round of 64 again. Getting into the financial side of it, I think assuming that CBS Turner would want to fork out more money for more games that take place prior to the round of 64 before that contract expires, and I think it's 2032, is a very big assumption. And the reason for doing it is that you think it's going to make more money. Well, not necessarily. Not if the networks don't want to pay more for what amounts to more first 4 games. So, but more than anything, as a fan of the sport, I don't want to see it happen because of the damage it will do to the regular season. Like, how much fun is it doing these seed lists, doing the write-ups every day, and you have high-stakes games. You have high-stakes games in November, those early season tournaments. And I just think that we are at the Goldilocks point. We have the sweet spot to where literally from day one, there are games every day where you're like, hey, this is going to impact the tournament. And if you go out to 96, I just don't think it would be the same.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest problem I have with going to 96, though, Griggs. Look at the screen. I don't have room for 30 more teams on the screen. It's full already.
I mean, you're going to ruin our show.
Like, totally ruin the show. I mean, no, but so let me go ahead and pull this down here. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we will be bracketing up. If you look below, you can now check out the brackets of the actual matchups and see if any of those, if we have that Dayton Xavier game, who knows? But on behalf of John Titel and David Dorman up here, John Slika and David Griggs, or at least a picture of David Griggs below us. Hopefully he'll be late for the rest of our podcast this season as well. But I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be talking to you again real soon.
Okay, so Chad, we are starting at 10:30 next week, right?
11:30 for you.
11:30, okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right.
Good night, everyone.